Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dylan. My name is Lur, and this is my first time to give a speech in DjangoCon. I'm super excited. Today's topic is about a BDD test in Django app. So before we head into our first slide, I'd like to ask you guys a question. So how many of you have no BDD or even say applied BDD in your development? Just put up your hands real quick. Good. Looks like San Diego, BDD has a great market in San Diego. So let me do a quick introduction for BDD. So BDD represents for behavior-driven development. So it is a methodology which is designed for improving the communication between the tech people and the non-tech people. So it's a purely business-oriented. And it's user-focused and can be easily understood by the non-tech people. So with this methodology, why we need a BDD? So because this is behavior-driven, so it's user behavior-focused, and it focuses more on user behaviors than just functions. And also, it focuses more on software development rather than just testing itself. And also, because this behavior-driven development comes with the description, that means this description can be applied to different platforms. I'd like to break down my presentation into 4 parts. So first, I'm going to introduce how we set up our BDD framework in the real production. And the second is how we integrate our BDD with our CI/CD process. The third thing is how we do the refinement, so how we just speed up execution for this testing. And the fourth thing is we are going to describe what's the limitation for the BDD. So before we set up our framework, we need to collect our requirements from our non-tech business people. So we are using gerking language to write down your description. So gerking is a language built on the keywords. So as you can see here, we have 3 levels, feature, scenario, and step. And each level will have its own sub-keywords, so which can make it executable. This is a small example. So as you can see, the feature is at the very top. You have your feature name. And then below the feature, you're going to have your scenario name. And within the scenario, you're going to describe how you're going to execute your test. And usually, I also like to add some tags for scenarios so that I can just skip some tasks I don't want to run. And also, you can use the data table to have your own specified parameters or your own predefined data. So now that we have our requirements ready, we need to set up our BDD. So we need to get some tools for our BDD. So you already, except for your feature files, you also need a Selenium, which is for manipulating your browsers. And also, we need a thing called Behave. It's a design framework for BDD in Python. And thanks to our Django community, we have a Django test integration, which is called Behave Django. And the fourth thing is we need a thing called page objects. It's a methodology for just gathering all your DOM elements in your page, and it's easier for you to do the management for your elements. Now, we now can get our hands dirty now. So first, install all the dependencies I mentioned in the slides, and Selenium, Behave Django, and also PDB for debugging. And then you have to install your WebDriver. So because Selenium needs WebDriver to control the browsers, and we need a Chrome driver for Chrome and for Gecko driver for the Firefox. And make sure you have already installed your WebDriver correctly, make sure the path is correct, the version is correct, otherwise you're going to have some compatible issues with Selenium. And for the Mac users, you're very lucky, you can use a homebrew to install all of them. It's very good. And the third thing is we need to create our features. So following the gerking style, you create our features. And then I want to emphasize, we also applied our own step convention. I'm going to introduce that in the following slide. The convention here is we are doing in this way. So with the keywords you see in the gerking style language, and then somebody do something in the page of the action words. So the page objects, as I mentioned before, is where you're going to have all your elements ready, and then it's easier for you to maintain and then simplify your UI, of course, and you can reduce your duplication of the code. And the action words is where we have all our implementation for the steps. And also, it's because we want to manage those steps easily, so we're just using action words to represent them. Now, so you can see that there is an example. So for logging, so when I log in with the user name and password in login page of login action, so that's how the step looks like. With all those predefined stuff, we can now build our code structure like this. And I just want to point out, if you want to have some predefined data to load in your test, you can use fixture. And second, if you want to do some quick ways, you can just use factory boy, if anyone knows that, to generate some fake data. That's very quick. And I'm going to go through those files very quickly. So first, you need an environment py. So environment py is where you configure your test running. So based on the gerking style feature file, you're going to iterate your running through those levels. So before the beginning of the running testing, and also the feature, scenario, and the steps. And by default, the Behave Django will have already set up the database for you before, and then they will flash out your database after scenario, and they will tear down the database afterward. For the action words, you need to load action because one feature can have multiple steps, and that's why you need multiple action words. And you need to tell the BDD framework, say, which action words you want to load in. So based on our convention for the step definition, we just tell the BDD if we find the keywords inside the step, we load in the corresponding action words. And for the action words, that's where you implement your steps. So easily, you just import in your page objects and then tell the BDD say what do you want to perform. So here is an example. I import in a login page, and then I tell BDD say I want to log in and input my username and password and login. So for the page object, this is one of the examples. So you need to select all the elements you need to perform your behaviors. So you have your user field, your name field, you have your password field, and the selecting method will be ID, class name, and XPath. And so if you can talk to your front-end designer, just tell them, just give you some identifiers that make your life easier for BDD testing. And now here's a step py. This is where you are going to match your action words with your step definition. So that means actually BDD has no syntax meaning, just they will execute all those steps in order. So just have to find a matching between your action words and your steps. So it's a mapping file. Now, after completing all of them, you are good to go, and you can run the command. So this is how the command looks like. So Python manage py is like you launch your server in Django, and then add a behave option. So you also can keep your database after running the testing. That's easier for you the next one, or even say you have some same database. Now, I also did a quick demo for you, and I created an app based on a Django tutorial, and I run in BDD testing against it. So the demo is about, I just voted for my presentation, and I said, it's pretty bad, and I increased the votes for it increased by 1. Okay, so the whole running just lasts for 3 seconds. Remember this time, it's very important later on. Now we're going to talk about our code delivery process. So everything will be online, and we need some tools to help us. So first, for the BDD, we need a feature file management tool, which is we are using heap test. And for the CI platform, we are using Travis CI, and they're for free for the open source. And also, we need a cross-platform test tool. Here you can see a bunch of them on the market, and we are using Browser Stack. And also, you are more than welcome to use headless mode of the browser. So that can run very fast. So PhantomJS, Puppeteer, yeah, whatever you like. And then I'm going to talk about the working flow. So first, you're running all your tests in your local machine, make sure they're passed. You can run them in Chrome, you can run them in Firefox. After they're passed, you can push the code into GitHub, and GitHub is ready to integrate with Travis CI. So on Travis CI, we're going to do the parallel testing because we really want to have our testing passed in different browsers, different operating systems. So let's say it's called compatible testing. And after running all of them, we're going to have our reports ready on our management tool. So once we see our management tool reports, we're going to check out what scenarios I have already filled. If filled, we're going to debug those testing code in the corresponding platforms. And then you do the same thing again, repush it to the GitHub and close the loop. Now, so we just did a quick review of the BDD. So we now just come to the refinement of BDD. As you can see, BDD is very costly. Just one scenario costs us 3 seconds to run. So we don't want to run everything for BDD. So first, the principle here is you have to identify your critical test. And the second thing is you have to minimize your unnecessary UI interaction. We are not using BDD to test against the UI designing. And also, the third thing is we can play a little trick with that to accelerate your execution. So we do some prerequisite step by using the test client from Django testing framework and then pass on the cookies into the WebDriver. I'll show the code. So the code here is we are using the client to log in your app. So you log in with the username and the password. And then after completing all your prerequisite steps, you just pass in your cookies into your WebDriver and then use the WebDriver so that the WebDriver will have the session of the server and then do just keep doing the user behaviors you're going to perform on our page. Now, remember that we have the previous demo on 3 seconds for running BDD. Now, let's see how fast it can be now. So same thing, log in with the client and then do the voting. Yeah, 2 seconds, around 2 seconds. And we say 1 second. Okay, 1 second really means a lot. Especially when you run the testing on the cloud and you're going to run those testing on those cross-platform tools, they charge you by minutes. So save time, save your money. Now we are having our debugging tool. So somehow we don't have bug in our code, debugging code. We have our bug in the testing. So especially you need to know how to debug it. And by default, behave will capture all the standing out. So maybe you are not able to do some breakpoint. And we just need to trace back the stack, the memory stack, to see where it failed. Here's a code for debugging. And as you can see, we want to have this in a debugging mode. So when you set an option for it, so we say behave debug on arrow, it's turned on. And then if it's failed, usually it's in your step. So after step, you're going to trace back your stack and see where it failed. To check out the variables, check out your logic. Yeah. So that's how the command looks like. So you need to customize your command to run this testing. So make sure you have a no capture option on your command. Otherwise, you're not able to just capture breakpoints. Now, here's the last part, the limitations of BDD. So BDD is really good, and it's very user-friendly. But I'm not selling snake oil here. It does have some limitations. So first, the logic of a description is linear. As you can see, they have many keywords, and they execute keywords in order. So if you want to have some conditions to run the BDD, like if else, so one way for you to do that is you just have a data table ready and iterate the records against your BDD testing. And second one, the solution is you just create multiple scenarios and pass in different parameters. The second limitation would be it's very hard for you to interact with those complex JS widgets like a data picker because you need to tell Selenium to click the very specified button, a specified link to use needs to use the BDD. So I do suggest don't bother yourself to how to code in interacting with the complex JS widget. The third thing is the errors raised in the different browsers can be various. So somehow you may face an error in Chrome like the element is not available in this page. However, when you do the same testing in Firefox, it may raise an error for you like this element is not interactable. So I do suggest if you want to test against whether you have this element on your page, don't use arrows to raise up. So just create some, just selecting multiple elements with the same class name or same ID and see whether the array is empty or it's not empty. So that can be very good. Okay, that's all I have today. And this is my email, and feel free to send me any questions. And how many minutes do we have? Like 7 minutes. Okay.
I had a question. I wanted to know if you could elaborate any more on one of your biggest gotchas. I know you had a slide dedicated to it, but what kind of vexed you the most with starting?
You mean, sorry?
You had a slide on some of your gotchas or things to note. You're not selling the snake oil. So I wanted to know one of your biggest gotchas and one of the biggest challenges you had.
So for running BDD, actually you are manipulating the elements on your page. And it can have some glitches when you do the BDD testing, like the page is already loaded, but your BDD framework didn't catch that elements and it threw out an error. So you do have to set up some waiting time for it. So that's the big challenge, because if you do it on your local machine, it can be very fast. But if you do it online or even push up your CI platform, somehow it may not, the elements may not be catched. So you need to check your network and check out whether this has been captured, and you set up your waiting time, like 1 second or 2 seconds to help you with that. So that's the thing.
Do you usually use asynchronous waits, or do you just use like sleep or something like that?
Oh yeah,
have you had trouble with
time sleep. So when you check about the framework they are using for behave, actually they are setting an infinite loop, and then if the running time just surpasses 10 seconds, they're going to stop and throw up an arrow.
Can you say anything about any sort of design patterns between you and UI or front end that makes it easier for you to not test like the UI design while you're making these page locators and et cetera?
Yes. So usually, if you have a very complex landing page, you have many animation on a page, it's very hard for you to use BDD actually, yes. So that's why I'm saying BDD is a methodology for you to have integration testing between your front end and your back end. And you just need to see whether there's exactly thing on your page, the data from our API, for example. So when we do this thing, we usually talk to our front-end developer, say, can you add some, specific class name ID? It's easier for you to do the testing. Because even though this BDD can support XPath, the XPath can be very slow if you do the BDD testing. So I do suggest you can use ID or use a class name in your front end, and can be very helpful for BDD.
So we use a little bit BDD, but a lot of times there's problems with the versions between Chrome and Firefox and whatever we're using for CI. Mm-hmm. How do you handle that?
You mean how to handle the errors in Chrome, Firefox?
Like that regards to versioning, like how do you either keep everything up to date or keep everything into one version, or the whole sync with Selenium, because it's really...
So that's why we use the cross-platform tool. So like a Source Lab or Browser Stack, they will handle those settings for you. So usually when we do the CI at Travis, we set up our versions. Usually we use the latest one, the latest version for the browser. And if it's not compatible with the Selenium, they will give you the indication. So like a Browser Stack or like Browser Stack, it has a page for you to set up your a browser version, if the synonym is not compatible with this version, it won't show up. So that's how we reference our settings.
You mentioned some weaknesses of BDD, but what are some unique strengths of BDD? Do you guys do both BDD and then also unit testing, or what combination is one better than the other?
So, like what I said, BDD is not everything. So you have to do those unit testing, functional testing before you can do BDD. BDD is a complementary testing, and it didn't cover everything. Usually, we say something you may not see your front end, but you have to consider it, like some error information going to throw up in your page. We may not test that with BDD, but you have to make sure there are some proper showing up in your page.
Just continuing on the last one, how do you measure test coverage with Behave?
So yeah, so that's why we need a description. So the description will be measured by the user. So actually, BDD is kind of like a mixing with integration testing and user acceptance testing. And with the description has been proved, you can just you can make sure that your testing is covered, especially for the user behaviors. And they say that, okay, that's what I want for performing the behaviors on your page. Then they said, okay, it's covered. That's what we say. So it's purely user behaved, and we only test against the requirements we collect. So that's a coverage.
All right. Well, let's give a round of hand.
Yeah. Okay.